Welcome back, everybody. So if you're new to the stream, then hi. What we're doing is evaluating Rust GUI tech. We've been doing it for quite a while now. And we're looking at EGUI at the moment. Yeah. And we made some progress on the last video. Yeah, ran into some weird type inference issues. Oh, that was fun. Anyway, let's dive into what we're trying to do. So here we go. Morning. Hello, everybody in the chat. Oh, I forgot to paste the link to the chat in the Discord. Hold on. Let me do that real quick. Oh, dearie me. I thought I was all prepared, but no, I was getting all my examples prepared and I forgot to paste the link. Shocking. Shocking. I'm so professional. There we go. Right. So this is what we did with Cushy, right? We're trying to create a tab document example, and some of the things that we have to do on this require maintaining state in the application that's loaded and saved, and some things require like layout, and there's some stuff to do with some forms as well. We managed to achieve something. You know, we've got some form validation here. I don't like the way this is happening here. We've got this little container with these two things in, and this is growing to the wrong height and it's not aligned, and yeah, we could do better than this, hopefully. But this is sort of where we're trying to get to, right? So I was trying some of this off stream over the last few days, and probably should have recorded some of it on live stream, but yeah, I didn't. But if I had, you would have seen a world of pain. What kind of pain am I talking about? Let's show you. So, yeah. So, this is what we've achieved in the Hello EGUI little example. So I was trying to achieve this, and it is possible. There's living proof. Well, the living proof, it's code, isn't it? So, you know, you can do it, which is sort of what we want. And we want it so that it centers and is justified and wraps properly and so on. And there's a few elements on here. One, there's a frame, which is center justified, which contains two things. It contains an emoji and it contains some text. And these are two separate things, and they're in their own container. And the contents of that need to be laid out and sized appropriately. And then there's a checkbox which lives underneath this. And you would think, oh, that's easy to do. No. No, it's not easy to do. This is the somewhat insane amount of code required to do that. Let's quickly walk through this, right? And this is the non-recommended way of doing this as well, which we'll get to in a minute. So you create a new flex, you have to justify it, then you set a direction, then you say use the whole width and height of the container that it's in, the window that it's in, or the panel that it's in. And then you call show, and then that gives you a flex in a closure when you pass it the UI. And in that, we create two new flexes, right? One of them justifies to the center and takes the full width up, and so does the other one, right? How much of this we actually need or not is another matter. And then you create a new flex item, and then you call the show in method. And then inside that closure, you get another flex, which is the one we just created and not this outer flex, right? And in that, we're calling add UI. And inside that add UI, we're creating another flex item, which seems somewhat redundant to me. My understanding of this, it's a bit ropey. We're creating another new flex, and this has got a frame on it. And inside that UI, we're using the EGUI widgets, and we're creating new ones and then calling UI on them. And then we're doing that for a rich text and for the emoji, and also one for the label. Right? And then in the second flex, we're trying to add the checkbox, and we do it in much the same manner. So you're like, fine, okay, great, it works. Okay, let's move on to the next example now. And then we'll come back to this one in a minute. Right, so the next example that I wanted to do was where we've got the form. Let's go back to the cushy example for a moment. Where we've got a form, we've got this situation where we've got a label on the left-hand side, we've got a text entry, and then we've got a button. And the button should take up the minimum amount of space required. Right? The input should size, and then these two things are supposed to be in a grid and have the same width on these. Right? That's what I'm trying to achieve. So, okay, let's try and recreate that in EGUI. So, yeah, here we go. So I prepared this because this is how I thought it would work. So you create a horizontal flex, and you call show on it, and you add UI, and everything should be fine, right? Oops, run the right example. And everything should be fine, right? No. Total fail. So it doesn't resize. So you're like, okay, how do we fix it? Is it because we didn't go width full on here, like we did on the other one? So you're like, all right then. No change. So I'm, okay, what else could it be then? Is it because we didn't do any grow items? Is it that? Oh, that did something, but not what we want. So we'll leave that there. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe it's something to do with the text edit. And there's a method called desired width. And you can specify like 1.0, for instance. And then you get this. Yeah, so probably not that then. Okay, well, what about UI.available width? And you're like, okay, well, the text box is the right size now, but where's my button gone? It's yeah, no, that didn't work, does it? So yeah, and then okay, what happens if you take grow items off now? No, it's still no. So I was struggling for a long time, and I just could not achieve like getting a text box next to a button to like take the available space on the window. And it's because I was using the API wrong. Okay, so we've got add UI here. It says add a child UI to the Flex container. It will be position based on this. You're like, okay, fine. And then you've got this add underneath it, which is add a Flex widget to the Flex container. Okay, so is it clear what the difference is? It wasn't clear to me. So instead of doing it like this, right, what you apparently have to do is go add, and then not that. But that. Let's see. Oh, what am I missing here? Unclose closing delimiter. Oh yeah. What have we got here? Add. Oh yeah, that one. There we go. So like, okay, that's you know, similar to what we had before. But now, does grow items work on it? Do we need to specify grow somewhere? I think we need to specify grow somewhere. So, you know, now we've got these things and they're laid out next to each other. This is growing and this is growing, but that's not what we want. We want this to be a fixed size and this one to be non-fixed size. So let's not do that, but instead here go grow 1.0. Then it works until you get to this minimum size for this. And I don't know what the minimum size issue is here. I haven't dug into that yet. And I'm not going to right now either. But anyway, so it's kind of odd that you have to do that. Right? And well, maybe it's because we didn't put the grow thing on the other thing before, you're thinking, right? So if we roll back these changes for a minute. Like so, and then put the grow here. No, that isn't the answer. You see, it's like really not clear as to why one API, one usage of the API works and the other one does not. Roll back, roll back. This works. So yeah, that was about 3 hours of frustration trying to figure that out, and I didn't figure it out in the end. I just left messages in the Discord channel saying, "Please help! I'm a noob. I can't get it to work. Why? I was using the API wrong. Oh, okay then. I didn't know. I didn't know." Yeah. Let's just get to the chat questions. AR5386 moved from Cushy. Reason that you missed. Yeah, on the first EGUI episode, I explained what the problem was. Essentially, the author of Cushy has been overloaded with the amount of work that I've been generating for him with my usage of Cushy, because there basically aren't any other users of Cushy at the moment, or at least active ones that I can see. And all the pull requests on the Cushy repo are mine currently, and he hasn't got time to do them all, and it's not fun for him sorting out all my problems all the time. Which is one of the things that I thought might happen with the use of Cushy. Because of the tiny community that we noted in the spreadsheet. So we started going through all this and noting all down all the things that EGUI can do, and started using that. EGUI has got a much more active user base. It's supposed to be easy to use, but if you want to do layout, no. I mean, I don't know how other people in the world create their GUIs. Do they just not do any kind of layout and just slap everything in a container and hope for the best? I don't know. I need to see more examples of real-world EGUI apps, I think, to see what other people get up to. But this has just been my experience of using the EGUI crates and some of the other crates, trying to just achieve like some random requirements. Yeah. So then we're like, all right then, okay, I've got my ... button, and I've got my input, and let's try and make a form. Okay, so we're like, okay, it resizes, so let's try using the form, right? So inside the Hello EGUI crate, which is apparently fairly popular. I mean, it's popular enough to have its own channel in the EGUI Discord server. That's for certain. So we've got this form, right? And we were trying to do some of this the other day. But the problem you get, and let's just create borrow this, and I'll show you where the problems come from. So we'll borrow this. I think we'll borrow quite a lot of this, in fact. Right. So, oops, a daisy. Right, so we've got a form with some fields and some validation rules. Fine. And then we need to create a form. And I'm just going to do it all in line here. Oh, I've got the wrong one. Okay, let's delete all this. And yeah, we'll create the form. We'll just paste all this in here for the moment, and then move some of our text edit example into this. Because we want to borrow some of this code from here, right? That's the idea. I'm getting random spam calls. There we go. Right, so form. We need to add a dependency on the form crate in order to use this. So I'm just going to hack this for the moment. Thus. And oh, we need the feature for that, don't we? The guard one. And this should be test. Wait, this one should be test 3, right? I didn't change the number. Okay, now we can import these, which is fine. Card report, import some of these. We don't have this fields thing yet, so I'm just going to slap this here. Let me go back to that form example, because we need to store this fields thing somewhere. Let's put that there for now. And we need field path. I guess it's that one. And we're missing a problem with fields validate. Oh, I'm building the wrong one. Right. Is it because I'm using the wrong validate? Probably. Oops. I'm not sure why it's giving me that bit of grief there right now. Cannot find attribute guard in this scope. Let's borrow bits from the form. Great. Example. So it's supposed to be guard validate. Let's just borrow these imports. I guess we need that example as well. Oh. Do we need a direct dependency on it? We can't just... Yeah, okay. We need one of these. I think we ran into this the other day. But not optional. Okay. Wait for the IDE to catch up. There we go. Right. Now we've got a validate method. Right. So we're going to run this form. We're going to try and build it again. I'm getting very confused with this now. It's very confused. Why? Why? Let's just refresh everything because it's confused. Yeah, that should be all okay. Why is it complaining? Yeah. That's very strange. The IDE's happy, but cargo's not happy. Why? That's very odd. Gonna be this. What am I missing here? Okay, I'm going mad. This is a bit strange. What is the problem? Who sees the problem here? Oh, I put it in dev dependencies. That's what the problem is. So the form, that needs to be there. This be here. That's what the problem is. Maybe. That should be okay now, right? No? Why? Why? What am I doing wrong here? Validate guard, everything's fine. Why it's not finding guard? But why? But why? I'm failing to understand cargo. Apparently. What is the problem here? Can I find guard in this scope? What's the problem with the scope? What is the problem? Is it? No. Is it? Does it need it in both because it's an example? I don't think so. No. Just going to try it down here. Need to be form. No example. Why is the examples? Oh. Does help if you're in the right crate. Okay, so it's still bitching here. Why? What? Dependencies. Eh? I'm really weirded out right now. Like, really weirded out here. Let's go. Maybe it's a weird. Maybe it's something like a build thing left over. It's weird. Like, because my IDE's happy. Otherwise, everything would be in red. So it's just cargo on the command line that's not happy. Maybe it's just like an incremental dependency weirdness leftover thing. These things are sent to testers, aren't they? Software development fun. And our survey says no. Okay, I'm running out of options here now. This is getting silly. Yeah, I don't understand. This is odd. I'm trying to remember which dependencies are used for examples. I might need to look at the cargo manual. Cargo dependencies for examples. Dependencies, which ones are used for examples? Who remembers? Because when you specify... Hold on. No. Trying to find examples like in the documentation is not very easy. Like examples. package dependencies, yada yada yada. But what about example dependencies? Let's just look at another example for a moment. Do I have to do some other weird things like examples? When you specify an example, you can say required features, but I'm not adding any particular features. Maybe we do need to do it the same way as this or something daft. S3 form required features. Yeah, let's do it the same way as this actually. And let's just borrow this. Features. Depth guard. And also dep and then EGUI form. Oh dear, it's been a while since I've had to do some cargo dependency flapping about. We should be able to just do this, right? We don't have a feature called guard, it's complaining. GUI flex. Let's get rid of these two on here because they were wrong. Validate guard. Use the guard dependency. Let's just make this optional. Okay, and then how about now? Do we need to specify the feature? Oh dear. But when you do it, it's supposed to say requires feature, yeah. Unless it's a typo, copy and paste. And we're still not compiling. Why? Okay. I'm just going to move the code into a new crate. I'll deal with that another time. Demo. Let me just copy this. Because I honestly don't care about dependency resolution issues for the purposes of this live stream. So we're going to do that. Right, and we're going to do that. And then we're going to borrow the guard dependency as well. And we're just going to get rid of all this because I don't care. And we're going to delete this from here. And we're just going to try using this in a main thing instead. And then we don't have to deal with dependency futzing around. But this crate needs to be listed in the workspace now because it's confuzzled. You have to say members. Here we go. Maybe not. It's already there, so that's okay. And it's complaining about no matching package. EGUI. Oh. That would help. Right. What about now? I suppose we need E-frame. Maybe. Okay, what about now? If we get those issues now, I'm going to be really weirded out. What's the problem? Cannot find guard. Why? Is it like what? What? Oh, this doesn't need to be optional now. Why? Why? And it can't find this either. Maybe there's some like features enabled in the workspace or something. You know, if this wasn't in a workspace, it might be a better idea. If this still doesn't work, I'm going to pull it out and then put it in outside of this workspace because there's clearly some weirdness going on with the dependencies that I'm failing to understand. Okay, let's just pull it out because I'm getting tired of this now. By demo. Okay, so we're going to open that as a new project. And we're going to try and work out what's going on in this project, because this is how a normal user would do it, right? That's where they are. Everything's fine there. Can't find this. Don't care about lints because we're not in a workspace. Like, no matter how good the ecosystem is, right? You know, you still get these annoying issues like this that we're getting today. It's like, why? You know, if we were in C land, we'd have a bunch of like random third-party libraries, and we'd be having include file hell instead of this. Equally frustrating. Okay. So, see, now it's complaining here. Let's have a look. And it's complaining about this one as well. What is it about this guard crate that is not happy? Let's see what dependencies it's actually pulled in. Is there a feature on guard or something like that that we're supposed to be doing? There is, isn't there? There's the derive feature. That's what we were missing all this time. Okay, it might actually compile now. Well, that was non-obvious. It doesn't help that the IDE wasn't complaining before either when we were trying it where it was. Okay, fine. Right. So back to the matter at hand. Now that we've got to this point. So we've got a form, and it's got username, and it's got this, right? And what we want to do is put the ... button next to it and change it into like directory, as that's what my example would be. So let's just rename this. Right. And then in our other project, we had the flex example with text edit, right? So we want to sort of borrow this and put this in the form. This is what I'm trying to get to. So we're just going to pop this above this now and make sure that it all compiles. So we don't really care about the text too much, but we'll just create one there for the moment. Sure. Right, so now we should have a flex thing and a form thing. Right. And then we've got this form validation. And this is one of the reasons why you want to use the form crate, because you don't want to have to write the validation code yourself. We're going to see. So what we need to do is this. Before I do that though, well, no, let's do it. Okay, so to add things to a form, you have to use this UI thing, and you have to give it something that uses the field, right? So instead of that, right, the obvious thing to try and do first would be this, right? No. It says trait bound in response widget is not satisfied. So this doesn't return the same kind of thing that a text edit gives you. So you're like, okay, can we go response on here? No. Yeah. So you're like, well, how do I use flexes in a form? And the answer is you don't. At least that's the answer as I understand it today. I mean, let's put this back for a second and have a quick look at this UI method that's on the form. So it says It wants something that implements a widget. So we go, okay, well, text edit must apparently implement widget, but let's just quickly see if we can find it. Just because I'm curious and I haven't really looked around the EGUI code base yet. So we've got text edit. So there must be a widget for text edit. There it is. And the way that it does it is it builds a response object, calls self.show. Okay. And this is why I was trying that .response thing. But yeah. So flex horizontal, right? I'm looking for widget. But I don't think it does it. I mean, we know it doesn't because there was a compile error, right? But I'm just kind of curious to see what there was in there. So it's not a widget. So in Cushy, for instance, everything was a widget. But in EGUI, that is not the case. So if we go back to where this text edit was and look in EGUI, right, we've got widgets and we've got text edit and it's fine. So let's quickly look at a button and it's got widget for button. Oh, you can't quite see on my screen. It's here. Down here. Right. So you got widgets and they all implement widgets, but there's other things as well, like containers. And these aren't widgets. And I'm not sure about this flex thing, but it feels like it's a container rather than a widget. So you get a problem. So you're like, okay, well, what's form UI doing with this widget? Can we look? And then if we look inside here, we find code to use vertical and other non-flex method calls, essentially. So it's never going to work without some extra work, which I'm not prepared to do. Not right now, not in this part of this evaluation anyway. Right. So yeah. But what else is it doing in here? We'll have a quick look at what it's actually doing. It's creating some blurred thing. It's deciding whether the form field should have an error. Changing the color if there's errors. Creating the label. And putting the content and the error there. Right? And then adding an error if there is an error. That's kind of what it's doing. But it's not using flex to do it. And this presents a problem because I want a form that can be resized. So not only that, but we also have another problem. The next problem, let's go back to the Cushy example for a second. The next problem is a grid. Okay, so this is the Cushy example, and there is a grid here. Okay, this is essentially, oops, daisy, come back. This is essentially the layout of what you're looking at here. So let me see if I can bring these up side by side. That's essentially what we've got. We've got a white window inside which we've got an orange box, which is the form, which is all centered, right? And then inside that, there's two areas. There's one area which contains all the controls, and then there's another area underneath it for the button, right? And those are independent. And they're sort of centrally aligned, and they should grow to the container. And then inside the form container, we've got a grid. We've got a grid. Right. So, grids. We need flexes because we need to put all that content in the center of the window, and to do that you use a flex, right? So grids. Grids. Let's go to grids. EGUI grid. And look, EGUI's got a grid. You're like, fine, but it doesn't use flex, so it's not fine. So yeah. Yeah. Let's just borrow this, just for fun. Just for fun. Let's just paste that in there for the moment and comment out all this form stuff. And we'll have a quick experiment with this before I jump to my inevitable conclusion. So this is a grid. So how does that relate to the form that we want? So our grid and the cushy example that we've got isn't really what I want either, because when you've got errors, the errors appear in the wrong place. The errors should be underneath both the name and the field that they relate to, in my head. They shouldn't be sort of like stuck here and cause weird rendering issues like this. So essentially what I want apologies for the brightness. Essentially what I want is a grid that's like this, where you've got two columns and you've got the name over here and then the inputs over here. And they may be in a container. And this bit resizes based on the width of the window or the container that the grid is in. And this side takes the minimum amount of space, which is the space required for the longest field. Right? And then there's another box inside there. Right? That kind of thing. And then what I want is for there to be an error message which spans two columns. Oh dear. Oh dear. How do we make the eraser erase? Come on, Microsoft. What happens? No. just oh, Microsoft. And then what do we fill this? Right. I want the error messages to span the columns. That's what I want. I mean, I want to create a nice form, right? You know, not just any old random bleh that doesn't have the nice things like resizing and errors that take the right amount of space and all this. It doesn't feel like it's too much to ask. On the web, this wouldn't be a problem. But there we are. So we got to try and make that. So we need flex to get the proper resizing. But the flex crate doesn't have any grids. EGUI's got grids. And then we've got the form as well. So we've got these three things all working against each other at the moment, it seems. Where is our little example? So spanning columns. I don't see how you span columns. So when you do this, it basically adds another column, but it doesn't span things. At least I don't see from here how you span things. Right. So sure, it might work for like simple UIs which don't have spanning and yeah, but it's no good. So I'm like, okay, so I need a different grid solution. So it turns out that the EGUI Taffy crate, and there's two EGUI Taffy crates to make things slightly more confusing, because in the Hello EGUI list of crates, there is an EGUI Taffy here, which has this README file, and there is a new crate from this repository, which has this README file. The important thing about this is that it has the CSS Flexbox and it has grid layouts, right? So we can solve two of the problems that we've got. We can have Taffy render Flexboxes and grids together, and the grid should be resized with inside the Flexbox, right? But the third problem we've got is that now we don't have a form validation library to use because they don't accept like resizable layers. Plus, the label is in the wrong place on the form anyway. So, yeah. So that's where we got to. So I did try this, and it does indeed seem to work. I ran into some weird issues, which I'll show you at, so that if you're coming across this, then you'll know, oh, that's what it is. Right, so let's go back to this tab document example thingamajigamy that we've been fiddling around with. Tabs. Right, so those examples I've put inside this. So we've got our home tab, and this is now using the Taffy. So we can do a quick contrast and compare with Taffy and non-Taffy as well. Let's see if I can bring that up, because I did that as a separate commit. Yes, here we are. So Taffy versus non-Taffy. Let's take off the highlighting for a second. There we go. So this is how it was done with the flex crate, where we've got the justification, direction, aligning items, all this side of things. And we've got the flex add instead of the show in and all this stuff going on, right? And then we've got the emoji, and then we've got the heading. And in here, we're using translations as well. And then we've got the show home on startup checkbox, right? Fine. And then the right hand side, this is what the same thing looks like in Taffy. So we create a default style and we put some padding on gaps on it. You can ignore that for the time being. The bit where it gets interesting is how you create the layout. So you go TUI, I guess, which stands for Taffy UI. And you have to give it an ID. And you say reserve the available space as opposed to these two H width, H fulls. Then you have to create a style instead of calling individual methods with separate arguments. And you can see that we've got the same style. So we've got justify center, flex direction vertical, but in here it's column. Aligning items in the center. And we also, it turns out we need this size thing as well. To say, and this %1 means 100%, which is kind of weird. And then it uses the remaining properties from the default style, which get the default style. And then once you've created your style, you call show. And then here we create the inner flex, which contains the two items. So here we create a new flex, which contains two items. And then here we create the checkbox. And these two items need to be laid out horizontally, which is why it's got a row here, which is the same as this horizontal over here. So that's sort of like a contrast and compare of the two competing solutions. Fine. Everything's fine. That's what it looks like. And in addition to that, you also add the dependency. Right. So that's all fine. All good. So we've got the home tab and it's using TUI. So what we want to do now is try and update the new tab to have the form on it. Yeah. This is what we're going to try and do. So we've got this new tab, and currently I've got this junk code that's in there because I was trying to like organize some of this stuff. And this is what happens if you don't use a grid, right? So this is what we want. We've got name, long name, inputs, and we want error messages, right? So the idea is that you've got the first column on the left, the second column on the right, and then you've got the error. Let's just create a new tab. And if I pick something, the errors disappear, right? And then there's this stuff at the bottom down here. Just ignore that for now. But the problem is the name and the kind, they don't align. So the start of the form field don't align. And this is why we need a grid. And this is what it looks like if you don't use a grid. It looks terrible. So we need a grid. Joshua Fish says, when will you try GTK4? Never, because you need a C compiler to use it. That's the answer. This project is going to compile a build without a C compiler installed on your machine. If one of the dependencies uses a C compiler, I don't want it. Pure Rust, and that's it. Right. But interesting, a good question though. Yeah, GTK4. Man, I used GTK like late 90s. I was using that. The last time I used GTK was on a Quake 3 level editor that I was contributing to when I added Counter-Strike Source support for it, I think. Was it Counter-Strike or was it Counter-Strike Source? No, it was just Counter-Strike. Yeah, that was a long time ago. GTK Radiant. GTK Radiant. Long time ago. No, I'm not using that again, though. So this is what's on the new tab at the moment. So, yeah. So I started using the flex thing, and I haven't updated this to use Taffy yet. And I started creating the new tab, realized that there was no support for grids, plus the form stuff wasn't working. So now we've got to get all this code that's here and use Taffy and do our own form validation. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's just ignore what's there, right? Comment it all out. And then we'll just grab bits from it. Yeah, and everything will be fine. So what do we got to do? We want a form that's in the middle of the screen, right? Our home tab has got stuff that's in the middle of the screen. So let's borrow some stuff from here. Oh, I forgot to show you about the text wrapping. But before we do that, let me comment this out and run it again. Yeah, I ran into this. If you don't disable your text wrapping, this is what you get. Now, I was looking at the Taffy documentation, and I saw a little note in the README about text wrapping. I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I started using it, and then I totally forgot about that thing that's talked about text wrapping. And then I was looking like, why is it wrapping? None of the examples wrap. What's going on with this? Like, what? And then I remembered that little bit in the README. And the little bit in the README says, turn off your text wrapping mode. Or set it on each element directly. And it says do it in the context, but I didn't know where the context came from. It turns out it's not the context that's passed into the tab. It's a different context. It's a context from the UI. Okay, fine. Okay, so we're going to borrow this. And we're going to put that in there. And we're going to borrow, let's see, we're going to borrow up to here, I think. And maybe a semicolon. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fine. So let's run this and just, oh dear. Oh. Oh, I see. We'll get rid of this. Not sure where that came from. Right. So let's get rid of the home tab. So we've got a new tab with nothing in it. Great. Let's go TUI.label test. It's in the middle. This is a good start. This is a good start. Right, but we need a submit button. So let's just pretend that we've got a submit button and see what happens. Yeah. Found. Oh. Oh yes. No. Wait, what does this button want? I might have to look at the Taffy example. The Taffy example is pretty good as well, by the way. I mean, there's two different ways of creating buttons as well. There's the UI add where you go EGUI button, or there's some other button. And I forget where that is. Button demo. Oh, it wants a closure. Oh, I see. And the button can contain multiple things. Fine. Okay, we'll do it the dumb way. We'll go UI add. And then EGUI button. Was it this? Hold on. Oh, EGUI button new. Duh. We're going to try that. So we've got test and submit. I don't know why submit is giant like that. It's a bit odd. Yeah, that's unexpected. So why? So then we're in fun land of layout. Okay, let's look at this. This is a tool I found online to help you try and understand this Flexbox stuff, right? There is a cheat sheet for this. Let me just bring up said cheat sheet. This is the cheat sheet. Now, I don't know whether it's just me, and it probably is, but I find these flex boxes and the way they work just like really super weird. Like, they hurt my brain. They hurt my brain. Like, layout. Yeah. So anyway, the cheat sheet's all well and good, but if you look at the cheat sheet and then make a code change, you have to recompile your code, get to the same point, and then did it work and whatever. It's very time consuming, right? This little tool allows you to add items and set their properties and set the container properties as well. And then it gives you some CSS at the bottom. And then you basically use the values in the CSS in your Rust code. And then hopefully it should work. So this is what we're trying to create, where you've got one thing at the top, which is going to contain more stuff inside it. and then another thing underneath it. And you can fiddle around with these things. And it's quite useful. So yeah. But I don't really understand, based on what we just ran, why my button is being stretched like that. Entirely unexpected. And this has been my experience with all GUI layout systems so far. EGUI layout systems so far. They all do unexpected things. It wasn't much easier in Cushy. But I didn't run into as much pain with it, I don't think. So, and then in my notes, in my notes, unhappy thoughts for EGUI. Layout sucks. There, I said it. And there are reasons why layout has traditionally sucked in EGUI. And the author of EGUI notes that doing layout is hard because the code is creating layout as well as modifying the layout at the same time. And because of that, you have to do multiple passes to work out how big an element is. And then you like create the scene, and then you discard the scene, and then you use the size values that you had on the first attempt to work out how big things were, so that the second time you run through it, it knows the size of like a bit of text, for instance, and stuff like that. Right? So multi-pass like rendering stuff. I'm not going into the more detail on that, but it's one of the trade-offs with immediate mode GUIs. Layout is hard. So yeah, in EGUI there are multiple layout solutions, which doesn't help. And because there are multiple different layout solutions, the chance of you finding two crates which use the same layout solution just reduces the more crates you start using, right? If the framework has got support for layout built into it, then all of the crates will use the same layout system. But because there's competing layout systems, it's a nightmare when you want to use something from another crate. And this is exactly what we found today with the EGUI form crate. It doesn't support the layout, the chosen layout system of choice. So then you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll roll my own other code instead of using some library. And then you've got to spend loads of time doing that instead of actually writing your code. You know, maybe this stuff will improve over time. Hopefully something sane might happen, such as like merging the EGUI Taffy crate into EGUI itself, such that all EGUI crates can use the Taffy layout system, and then the world can move on. But that hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Yeah. So, some thoughts. All right. So we don't know why the submit button is big. I'm just going to ignore that for the moment. Maybe I'll try and work that out off stream. What I'm interested in is getting a form where it says test. So instead of this, we need something else. And the way we had another container on the home page, the home tab, was to create an add with border thing. So we're going to do the same thing as this. We're just going to plop that in. And we're going to delete these for now. And instead of having well, let me think about this. Well, I don't know what we're going to need, but we're going to add that. Right. And then we're going to pretend that we're going to have a form field, which means that I guess we need a nested one of these inside here. Right. And inside this bit, we're going to say, or is this where we want the grid? We want a net. No, we want. This is where we want the grid, isn't it? Okay, let me get rid of that bit. Let me go TUI label and put the word test inside here. And let's see what we get. So we've got a box centered which says test in the middle of it. Great. But instead of this, we want a grid. The grid that we want was this grid. So we're going to try and work out how to do that. What? Grid? Is it that easy? No. So let's run the EGUI Taffy demo and see if we can find a grid inside this. I have seen one. There's a main method here somewhere. There it is. Right. This is the EGUI Taffy demo, and there is a grid demo. There we go. So important to note is it supports column spanning, because we want the errors to span 2 columns. So we're going to try and find the grid demo in the example code. I think there's methods for some of these. There's virtual grid demo, grow demo, flex grid demo. Here we are. So you say TUI grid. No, but this is the stuff before that. Show TUI style grid column. Oh, I see. So it's got. Wait, what? So you create a TUI inside it. Okay, all right. I think I get the idea. And then you create style elements, then you just stick things in it. Okay, well, that's fine. Let's try that. So we're going to borrow this. Yeah, AR5386. Energy to pursue this, he says. Oh. Don't even get me started about the amount of energy to pursue this. Oh, dear. It's just... Some days I wake up in the morning and I lie in bed and I'm just like... Form layout, no. Form validation, no. And I just want to stay in bed. Do you know what I mean? Right. So we're going to add 2 things. One's going to be on the left and one's going to be on the right. And then another one is going to be spanned. Let's see if we can make this happen. So you go grid column, column span 5 to span things. Now, probably on the spanned one, a grid has got a left edge and a right edge, and then it's going to have a middle, right? So I think the way it works is the number that you want is 3. 1, 2, 3. This is what I think. Right. So we've got a span thing, maybe. Okay. And there's this grid template columns. Oh no, what's all this? Should we just see what happens? Align items. Stretch grid cells default to, yeah, okay, we want this, I think. And that's in the grid container, which is this one. You see, it's all well and good being able to use TUI and specify a bunch of properties and all this kind of thing, but it's just so much cross-referencing of like random property names. No, I just want to go grid, new, add column, add column, add row, and then, you know, that kind of stuff, and, you know, or grid new and then set cell and, you know, that kind of thing. You know, I want an API to do it. I don't want to have to fap about remembering property names. Ugh. You know, for instance, let me just expand on that point for a moment. So if we go back to the Cushy example, which uses a grid, right? The new tab has got a grid in it, right? And the API that I want, right, looks like this. So you go grid from rows, grid widgets, and you say, here's the dimensions, and you go, yeah, grid. There's my grid, right? And the grid widgets comes from a list of widgets. So I've got a row. I've got a row, and I've got a row, and I've got a row, and I've got a row. Right? And I create the rows by creating widgets and then adding them to a tuple. And this is a relatively sane API for creating a grid. It wasn't immediately obvious to me when I first did it, but overall it's fairly sane. And at no point are you having to flap about looking up like grid template and web CSS style names and stuff. It's like, nope, nope. I don't want to live in this half web, half Rust world. No. No. I don't like it. Let me make a note of that. EGUI. EGUI Taffy. I don't want to remember style names to create grids. I want a grid API. There. And let's go. Unhappy thoughts. There it is. Okay, moving on. So we've got a grid container and we put some stuff in it and we've got a left and a right. I mean, how do we even know they're on the same column? Like, I don't know what's going to happen here. Let's just run it. Oh, we already ran it. And this is what we ended up with. We ended up with everything on the same row. So somehow you do that. I don't know how. So this is how they create a grid. And they say the first one spans a column. Oh, and this is grid row. Row span. I don't really care about row spanning. And then You just add items to it? Like, is it because there's this weird CSS grid craziness? Who thinks there's documentation for this? Track sizing functions of the width grid column. It's not telling my brain anything. Like, it's just what am I supposed to do now? Am I supposed to be like, there is something to be said for a complicated example, like the one we've got. Let me go back to it. There is something to be said for a complicated example, which shows you all the capabilities that the grid system offers. And there is also something to be said for an example which just shows a complete and utter noob how to create the most simple grid possible. Rather than, because now I'm in this land of like, okay, well now I've got this super complicated grid example and I have to try and unpick out of it the bits of information that I need in order to try and work out how to just create a simple grid. Like, my example that I'm creating could be even simpler, right? By not even trying to do a spanned column and just having 2 rows, left, right, right? A grid. But what we end up with is this. And then there's not a lot of guidance that I'm seeing on how to create grids. Maybe let's look for some guidance somewhere. Let's try that. Okay, here we go then. So, grids. Buttons, grids, everything's fine. You know, it's got grids. API documentation? What do we think? Should we look at the Taffy documentation? Complete guide to CSS grid. Oh, I don't want to learn about CSS, for sake. I'm not writing web apps. I want an API. I want a discoverable API, people. I don't care about CSS grids. I don't care about it. Why should I have to care about CSS, cascading style sheets, when I'm not using web technologies? Okay. More unhappy thoughts. Just, yes. It's required to learn CSS grids and CSS flex box web technologies, even though we're creating a non-web desktop native app. Oh my God. It just keeps going. I'm not learning this. I'm just not doing it. No. It's still going. Are we at the end yet? Someone tell me when I get to the end. Oh, we're at the end. Okay, I'm not learning that. Let's see if we can find online CSS grid tool. Grid generator. Please may I have some code. Okay, so what's it done for us here? Let's not do that actually. Columns 2, rows 2. Why is it? Template columns repeat like. This is so weird and alien to me. Like what? What? I'm sure it all makes sense. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it's all very good and useful, but no. Just look at this. Display grid, grid template columns. You have to learn, you have to know what a grid, you have to know what a template is. Then there's some stuff to do with repeating. And then you've got some gaps. I don't really care about the gaps. They could probably be. And then down here for each independent div that you've got, which I've only got 4 cells, but apparently there's 5 divs. What kind of madness is this? Is more of it automatic if you just do some of... Oh. What's the simplest grid that you can have? Hold on. What is this fur? Oh, we're gonna have to look, aren't we? Let's just put that there. Basics. To get started, you have to find a container element, and we did that. Set the column and row sizes of grid template columns with grid template rows. Grid template columns. Oh man, this is some crazy stuff. This is. I'm sure it's very powerful, but I just don't need that right now, or at least I don't think I need that. So in the grid demo, let's just go back to that for a second. Let's see if we can fathom it. In this, the container has these 2 things. I'm just going to borrow those for a moment, and then we're going to try and understand them. So we've got a vector. So let's say I want 2 rows and 2 columns. Why is there an autofill? What is this about? And why is there a nested vector? Can we just borrow the same thing here? Does this compile? This is supposed to be half the same size. I mean, it compiles. Do we get a grid? No. Was I expecting to get a grid? No. Why? Because of my unwillingness to learn CSS technologies. Some things I'm willing to learn. Lots of things I'm willing to learn. I kind of just want to delete things out of this example until it does what I want it to, but at the same time, empty cell. It's magic. Magic. Like, I don't see how all the other grid columns know that they're in a grid or anything. It's just... What? Seems pretty random. Like, how do I create a grid? I just want to create a grid. Is it because it's inheriting stuff from a default style? No, because the default style only contains padding and gap. I mean, these comments probably aren't correct, so let's delete the comment. Grid template columns. Grid template columns defines the rows and columns of grid with a space-separated list of values. I mean, what does FR even mean? Fraction tracking, I see. So if one of them was like 0.5, yeah, fine. Right, but grid numbers lines are automatically assigned positive numbers from these assignments. Don't care about all the naming of things, but it feels like... Eh? What am I missing here? What am I missing? Like... There's a grid property. Did I miss that? I did miss that. Oh, damn it. Okay, fine. Now what does it do? Oh my god, we've got a grid. Fine. But it's not what we want. What do we want? Let's go back to the cushy example. Right. We want this behavior where there's some sort of like amount of space and then the thing in the center grows. How would we achieve that? I want to say these things should grow a lot. Let's try. How we've got this grow, flex grow. Do we think this is going to have any effect? Because the problem we've got is this Taffy thing has got a bunch of styles, and all the styles don't really relate to each other because you've got flex boxes and then you've got grids, and now you've got this style thing, and everything is just bundled together in the same style property. And it's just like, well, which ones are applicable to the thing that I'm working with? You don't know. No, I don't like it. Let's write more unhappy thoughts. It's not clear which style properties are actually usable, e.g. when creating grid cells. Okay. No effect. Why? Do we need to make this thing grow as well? On the parent, flex grow, 0.0. So they grew vertically. Wait. No, I need a container for my grid, don't I? Okay. I do. It's true. We had this one. Yeah, just borrow this. So I need to nest the grid inside this. In a row, yes. Oh, why does it do that? And we're going to put that inside this. What? What? Wait, hold on. That might be my bad. Wait. I'll put that in the wrong place. Everything's fine. The submit button's not supposed to be in it. Okay, let's try again. Okay. So now we've got a submit box under there, but they still like grow vertically, whereas I want them to grow horizontally. Okay, why? Is it because... No idea. I said I've got a row here and I want it to grow. And this is what it's like developing with EGUI Taffy. It's just... Maybe if you come from a CSS background, right, this is all fine. Maybe you spent the last 5 years of your life like doing web development and fully understand CSS flex boxes and grids, and it all comes completely and utterly natural to you. But if you're a desktop application programmer or someone who spends a lot of their time doing like work on embedded processors and all this kind of stuff, and you just want a GUI for it, and you don't care about any of this web fangle malarkey, and then you try and use a GUI framework to do it, this is the pain that you're going to be suffering. So just remember, folks, it's only software. How hard can it be? We'll find out on the next one. Bye.